My hands trembled slightly as I stood outside the massive iron gates of the Whitmore estate. At 45, I'd cleaned enough houses to know wealth when I saw it. But this place was different. 3 stories of pristine white stone rose before me like a castle, complete with manicured gardens that probably cost more than I made in a year. I pressed the intercom button, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Emily Johnson here for the interview," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The gate buzzed open with an electronic hum that seemed to echo my nervousness. I walked up the circular driveway, my worn but clean shoes clicking against the polished stone. This job could change everything for me. After my divorce 2 years ago, I'd been barely scraping by, working multiple cleaning jobs just to keep my small apartment. My daughter Sarah was starting college next year, and I needed stability. The front door opened before I could knock. A stern-looking woman in her 60s stood there, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun. She looked me up and down with the kind of calculating stare I'd grown used to over the years. "Mrs. Chen, the house manager," she said curtly. "You're 5 minutes early. Good. Follow me." We walked through a marble foyer that could have fit my entire living room. Crystal chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, and oil paintings in heavy gold frames lined the walls. Everything screamed money and privilege. "The position is for domestic help," Mrs. Chen explained as we moved through the house. "Mr. Whitmore is a single father to 3-year-old triplets. His wife died in childbirth, and he's particular about who cares for his children." We passed a living room with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Through tall windows, I caught glimpses of children playing in a backyard that seemed to stretch for acres. "The previous nanny quit last week," Mrs. Chen continued. "The children can be challenging. Mr. Whitmore works long hours running his investment firm. He needs someone reliable." She stopped outside a heavy wooden door. "Wait here." I stood alone in the hallway, studying the family portraits on the walls. One showed a beautiful blonde woman holding 3 babies. Her smile was radiant, but there was something sad in her eyes, as if she somehow knew her time was limited. "Come in." The voice was deep, authoritative. I entered what was clearly a home office. Leather-bound books lined the walls, and a massive desk dominated the center of the room. Behind it sat a man who couldn't have been much older than me, though his dark hair was already showing threads of silver at the temples. His blue eyes were sharp, assessing, and unmistakably cold. "Jacob Whitmore," he said, without standing or offering his hand. "Sit." I took the chair across from his desk, keeping my back straight despite feeling like I was being interviewed for a crime rather than a job. "Your references check out," he said, barely glancing at the papers before him. "But I need to be clear about something. This is a domestic position, housekeeping, meal preparation, basic childcare when needed. Nothing more." The way he emphasized "nothing more" made my cheeks burn. I'd heard that tone before, the assumption that someone who looked like me in my position might have ulterior motives. "I understand, Mr. Whitmore," I replied evenly. "I'm here to work." He studied me for a long moment. "Good. The pay is $15 an hour, Monday through Friday, 7 to 7. Weekends off unless there's an emergency. Mrs. Chen will show you around." It wasn't great money, but it was steady, and 12 hours meant decent weekly pay. I nodded. "One more thing," he said, his voice dropping even lower. "My children have been through enough trauma losing their mother. I won't tolerate anyone who might confuse their understanding of family structures or create inappropriate attachments." The words hit me like a slap. He was making assumptions about me before even giving me a chance. But I needed this job desperately. "Your children's well-being is my priority, Mr. Whitmore. Nothing else." He nodded curtly and returned to his paperwork, clearly dismissing me. Mrs. Chen led me through the rest of the house, a kitchen that belonged in a restaurant, a playroom filled with expensive toys, and finally to the nursery where 3 toddlers were having what could only be described as a complete meltdown. "This is Lily, James, and Emma," Mrs. Chen shouted over the crying. A young woman who looked barely out of high school was trying unsuccessfully to calm them. "Maria, this is Emily. She starts Monday." The scene was chaos. Lily was throwing blocks across the room while James screamed at the top of his lungs. Emma sat in the corner, tears streaming down her face, clutching a stuffed elephant that had seen better days. Something in me just clicked. Maybe it was all those years raising Sarah, or maybe it was the maternal instinct that never really goes away. I knelt down beside Emma first. "Hey there, sweet girl," I said softly. "That's a very special elephant you have there." She looked up at me with tear-filled blue eyes, her father's eyes, and hiccuped. "His name is Mr. Peanuts," she whispered. "Mr. Peanuts looks like he gives the best hugs," I said, and she nodded solemnly. Within 10 minutes, I had all 3 children sitting in a circle, listening to a story I made up about Mr. Peanuts and his adventures. The room had gone from chaos to calm, and even Maria looked amazed. Mrs. Chen watched from the doorway, and I could swear I saw her stern expression soften just a little. "Monday, 7 a.m. sharp," she said when the children were finally settled for their afternoon nap. As I walked back to my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that this job was going to change my life in ways I couldn't imagine. I just didn't know if it would be for better or worse. But looking back through the window at those 3 little faces pressed against the glass, waving goodbye, I knew I was already invested in their well-being in a way that went beyond just earning a paycheck. If you're watching this from somewhere in the world, I'd love to know. Where are you tuning in from? Hit that subscribe button because this story is just getting started, and trust me, you won't believe what happens next. Monday morning was going to bring revelations that would turn everything upside down. Monday morning came faster than I expected. I arrived at the Whitmore estate at exactly 7 a.m. My hands steady this time, but my stomach still doing backflips. Mrs. Chen met me at the side entrance, her expression as unreadable as ever. "Mr. Whitmore left for the office an hour ago," she informed me, handing me a detailed schedule. "Breakfast is at 8, outdoor playtime at 10, lunch at noon, nap at 1. Follow this exactly." The schedule was typed and laminated, every minute accounted for. It looked more like a corporate agenda than a daily routine for 3-year-olds. "What about flexibility?" I asked. "Children don't always stick to rigid schedules." Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose slightly. "Mr. Whitmore believes structure is essential for the children's development. Deviation from the schedule requires his approval." I bit back my response. In all my years of raising Sarah, I'd learned that kids needed structure, yes, but they also needed room to be kids. The morning started well enough. The triplets were surprisingly well behaved at breakfast, though I noticed they ate mechanically, without much joy. They said please and thank you, like little robots, but there was no chatter, no messy faces, no giggles. "They're so quiet," I mentioned to Mrs. Chen as we cleared the dishes. "Mr. Whitmore prefers a calm household," she replied. "The children have been taught proper behavior." During outdoor playtime, I watched the triplets from the patio. They played separately, each with their own toys in their own designated areas of the massive playground. No sharing, no interaction, no conflict, but also no connection. Something about it broke my heart. "Can they play together?" I asked Mrs. Chen, who was supervising from a distance. "Mr. Whitmore found that it reduces arguments and accidents," she explained. "Each child has their own space and toys." But I could see Emma glancing longingly at the swing where James was playing, and Lily kept looking toward the sandbox where her siblings were building separate castles. Lunch was another quiet affair. The children ate their precisely portioned meals without complaint, but again, without joy. When Emma dropped a piece of apple on the floor, she immediately looked terrified. "It's okay, sweetheart," I said gently, picking up the apple. "Accidents happen." She stared at me with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe I wasn't angry. Nap time was when everything changed. Mrs. Chen had shown me the nap time routine. Each child in their own room, lights off, classical music playing softly. No stories, no cuddles, no comfort items except for Emma's beloved Mr. Peanuts. But when I went to check on them after 20 minutes, I heard soft crying from Emma's room. She was curled up in her toddler bed, clutching Mr. Peanuts, tears rolling down her cheeks. "What's wrong, baby?" I whispered, sitting on the edge of her bed. "I miss Mommy," she said so quietly I almost didn't hear her. My heart clenched. These children had been through such trauma, and they were being raised like little soldiers instead of grieving toddlers who needed comfort. "I know you do," I said softly. "It's okay to miss her. Daddy says big girls don't cry," Emma sniffled. "Well, I think even big girls need to cry sometimes," I told her. "It's how we let out our sad feelings so we can make room for happy ones." I started humming a lullaby my grandmother used to sing to me, the same one I'd sung to Sarah when she was small. Emma's eyes grew heavy, and gradually her breathing evened out. But when I stood to leave, I heard movement from the other rooms. Both James and Lily were awake too, clearly struggling with their own quiet sadness. I made a decision that would change everything. I gathered all 3 children into Emma's room, the largest of the 3. Lily and James were initially confused, looking around nervously as if they expected to get in trouble. "Story time," I whispered conspiratorially. I sat on the floor with my back against Emma's bed, and slowly all 3 children gravitated toward me. Emma curled up on my left side, Lily on my right, and James settled in front of me, leaning back against my legs. I told them about a magical kingdom where 3 brave little princes and princesses went on adventures together, always looking out for each other, always stronger together than apart. Their eyes grew wide with wonder. Clearly, this wasn't part of their usual routine. By the time I finished the story, all 3 were fast asleep, tangled together like puppies. I carefully moved them back to their individual beds, my heart full, but also worried. I deviated from the schedule, and Mrs. Chen had made it clear that wasn't acceptable. The rest of the afternoon went smoothly. The children seemed more relaxed, more willing to smile. During dinner prep, Emma even asked if she could help me set the table. "We don't usually," she started, then looked around nervously. "It's okay," I assured her. "Helping is good." As I was cleaning up the kitchen around 6:30, I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the marble foyer. Mr. Whitmore was home. Mrs. Chen appeared immediately, as if she'd been waiting for him. I couldn't hear their conversation from the kitchen, but their voices carried a serious tone. A few minutes later, Mrs. Chen appeared in the kitchen doorway, her expression grim. "Mr. Whitmore wants to see you in his office," she said. "Now." My stomach dropped. Someone must have told him about nap time, about the story, about the children being together. I walked to his office on unsteady legs, knowing this conversation could end my employment before it had really begun. He was standing behind his desk when I entered, still in his expensive suit, but with his tie loosened. His jaw was set in a hard line. "Sit," he said, and I noticed he didn't look directly at me. "Mrs. Chen informed me that you deviated from the children's schedule today," he began, his voice carefully controlled. "Is that correct?" I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. "Yes, sir. The schedule exists for a reason. These children need structure, consistency. They've already been through enough chaos in their short lives. With respect, Mr. Whitmore, they've been through trauma. Structure is important, but so is comfort. So is being allowed to be children." His eyes flashed with something, anger maybe, or surprise, that I'd pushed back. "You were hired to follow instructions, not to make parenting decisions," he said coldly. "I was hired to care for your children," I replied, keeping my voice steady despite my racing heart. And that's exactly what I was doing. For a moment, we stared at each other across the desk. Then he picked up a piece of paper. "This is your first and only warning," he said. "Follow the schedule or find another job." I nodded, knowing I had no choice. But as I walked toward the door, I turned back. "Mr. Whitmore, can I ask you something?" He looked up, clearly surprised by my boldness. "When was the last time you heard your children laugh?" The question hung in the air between us like a challenge. His face went pale, and for just a moment, I saw something crack in his controlled facade. But then the mask slipped back into place. "That will be all," he said dismissively. As I left his office, I knew I was walking a dangerous line. But those 3 little faces were already etched in my heart, and I couldn't stand by and watch them grow up without joy. Tomorrow would bring a choice that would test everything I believed about right and wrong. Tuesday morning arrived with unexpected chaos. I let myself into the house at 7 a.m. to find Mrs. Chen frantically talking on the phone in rapid Mandarin while smoke billowed from the kitchen. "The stove caught fire," she explained after hanging up, looking more flustered than I'd ever seen her. "Small fire, but the kitchen is unusable. Mr. Whitmore had to leave early for an emergency board meeting. The repair crew won't be here until this afternoon." The children were huddled together on the living room sofa, still in their pajamas, looking scared and confused. The rigid schedule they were used to had been completely disrupted. "What about breakfast?" I asked. Mrs. Chen looked overwhelmed. "I don't know. Mr. Whitmore specifically said to maintain the schedule. But She gestured helplessly at the chaos around us. I can handle it, I said without thinking. But the kitchen, I'll figure something out. Mrs. Chen hesitated, then nodded. I need to deal with the insurance inspector and the repair estimates. Can you manage the children until I get back? It was the first time she'd left me completely alone with them, and I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. But she didn't have a choice. After she left, I gathered the triplets around me on the sofa. Well, this is an adventure, isn't it? I said, trying to keep my tone light despite their worried faces. Where's Mrs. Chen? Lily asked, her bottom lip trembling. She's taking care of grown-up stuff, I explained. But I'm here, and we're going to have the best day ever. First, we need to solve the breakfast problem. I led them to the damaged kitchen to assess the situation. The stove was blackened, but the refrigerator and pantry were untouched. The microwave still worked. Okay, team, I announced. We're going to have a breakfast picnic. Their eyes widened. A picnic, Emma whispered, as if the word was magical. Inside or outside? James asked, getting excited. Both, I decided. First we make our food, then we choose our perfect picnic spot. I found bagels, cream cheese, fruit, and juice boxes. Nothing fancy, but the children watched with fascination as I let them help spread cream cheese and arrange strawberry slices. I've never helped make breakfast before, Lily admitted, concentrating hard on her bagel. Well, you're doing great, I encouraged her. When we were done, I spread a blanket on the living room floor in front of the massive windows that overlooked the garden. This is our breakfast restaurant, I announced, and you three are my very important customers. For the first time since I'd met them, the children giggled. Actually giggled. We ate breakfast sitting on the floor, talking about everything and nothing. Emma told me about a dream she'd had about flying horses. James showed me how he could balance a strawberry on his nose. Lily sang a song she'd made up about Mr. Peanuts. They were being children, real, silly, happy children. After breakfast, with the schedule completely abandoned, I asked them what they wanted to do. Can we play together? Emma asked hesitantly. Like, all three of us? Of course you can, I said, surprised by the question. But Daddy says, James started. Today is a special day, I interrupted gently. Today, we make our own rules. What followed was the most beautiful chaos I'd ever witnessed. They built a fort out of sofa cushions. They played an elaborate game of pretend where they were explorers in a jungle. They shared toys freely, negotiated conflicts on their own, and laughed until their sides hurt. I sat nearby, ostensibly supervising, but really just marveling at the transformation. These weren't the quiet, separate little robots I'd met yesterday. These were siblings, playing together the way nature intended. Around 11, Emma came over and climbed into my lap. Emily, she said softly. Yes, sweetheart. I like you better than the other helpers. Why's that? She thought for a moment. You make everything feel like home. My throat tightened with emotion. This is your home, baby. She shook her head seriously. It's a house. Home is different. Her words hit me harder than I expected. At 3 years old, she already understood the difference between a place where you live and a place where you belong. Just after noon, Mrs. Chen returned with the repair crew. She stopped short when she saw the living room, cushions everywhere, toys scattered about, 3 children playing together on the floor while I sat cross-legged beside them. What happened here? She asked. Before I could answer, all 3 children ran to her excitedly, talking over each other about their morning adventure, the breakfast picnic, the fort they'd built. Mrs. Chen looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. The schedule went out the window when the stove caught fire, I said calmly. Sometimes you have to adapt. She nodded slowly, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Mr. Whitmore specifically said, Mr. Whitmore wasn't here, I pointed out. I made the best decisions I could for his children. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. The repair crew worked in the kitchen while I helped the children with a quiet activity, coloring books at the dining room table. They chatted happily, sharing crayons and comparing pictures. At 3:30, Mrs. Chen approached me nervously. Mr. Whitmore is coming home early, she said. He wants to assess the kitchen damage himself. My stomach dropped. The house was still in disarray. The children were still playing together, and we were nowhere near back to the rigid schedule. Emily, Emma called from the table. Can you help me color this horse? I looked at Mrs. Chen, then at the children. Of course, honey. Whatever consequences were coming, I'd face them. These children had been happy today. Truly, genuinely happy. For the first time since I'd met them. At 4 o'clock, I heard the front door open with more force than usual. Heavy footsteps marched across the marble foyer, and I knew Mr. Whitmore was not in a good mood. Mrs. Chen met him in the hallway, and I could hear their voices, hers apologetic and nervous, his sharp with controlled anger. A few minutes later, he appeared in the dining room doorway. The children looked up from their coloring books, their faces immediately changing from open joy to cautious wariness. It broke my heart to see how quickly they shut down in his presence. "Daddy!" Emma said, but her voice was subdued compared to the excitement she'd shown all day. He surveyed the scene, the scattered cushions still on the living room floor, the children sitting together at one end of the dining table, me sitting beside them with crayons in my hands. His jaw tightened. "Children, go upstairs to your rooms," he said in a tone that brooked no argument. "Mrs. Chen will bring you a snack shortly." They obeyed immediately, but as Emma walked past me, she squeezed my hand. "Thank you for the best day ever," she whispered. When the children were gone, Mr. Whitmore turned his full attention to me. His blue eyes were cold as winter. My office. Now. I knew this was it. I was about to be fired for giving his children the best day they'd had since their mother died. But as I followed him down the hallway, I realized something that surprised me. I wasn't just going to lose my job. I was going to fight for those children. The walk to Mr. Whitmore's office felt like a death march. I could feel his anger radiating from him like heat from a furnace, and I knew this conversation wasn't going to be a simple reprimand. He closed the door behind us with a sharp click and moved to stand behind his desk. But he didn't sit. Instead, he placed his hands flat on the surface and leaned forward, his knuckles white with tension. "In one day," he began, his voice dangerously quiet, "you've undone months of careful structure and routine." I remained standing as well, meeting his gaze steadily. "I kept your children safe and happy during a crisis." "Happy?" His voice rose slightly. "They were climbing on furniture, making noise, creating chaos. That's not happiness, that's disorder. With respect, Mr. Whitmore, those children haven't been happy since I met them. Today was the first time I've seen them actually smile." His face darkened. "You don't know what you're talking about. My children are well-adjusted, well-behaved. Your children are scared," I interrupted, my own voice rising despite my better judgment. "They're so afraid of making mistakes, of being too loud, of being children, that they've forgotten how to live." "That's enough." He stood up straight, his full height imposing. "You've been here exactly 2 days, and you think you can waltz in and tell me how to raise my children? I think you're so afraid of losing them that you're suffocating them." The words hung in the air between us like a slap. I saw him flinch, saw something raw and vulnerable flash across his features before the anger returned. "You have no idea what I've been through," he said, his voice now deadly quiet. "What they've been through. You're right, I don't know everything, but I know what I see. 3 children who are desperate for connection, for comfort, for someone to tell them it's okay to feel things. They don't need—" "Emma told me she misses her mother," I said, cutting him off. "When's the last time you talked to her about that? When's the last time any of them were allowed to grieve?" His face went pale. "They were babies when she died. They don't remember. They remember more than you think. And even if they didn't, they're living with the aftermath of that loss every day. Your grief, your fear, your need to control everything, they feel all of it." For a moment, he said nothing. His breathing was heavy, and I could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. "My wife died because I wasn't careful enough," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Because I trusted the wrong people, made the wrong decisions. I won't make those mistakes with my children." The admission hung in the air, raw and painful. I felt my anger softening, replaced by something closer to understanding. "What happened?" I asked gently. He turned away from me, walking to the window that overlooked the garden where his children had played separately just yesterday. "Complications during delivery," he said without turning around. "The doctor assured us everything was fine, that she was strong enough for a natural birth with triplets." I believed him. I trusted him. And she— his voice broke slightly. "She died because I didn't ask enough questions, didn't demand better care." My heart clenched. "That wasn't your fault." He spun around, eyes blazing. Wasn't it? I'm their father. It's my job to protect them. And I failed before they were even born. You were grieving. You were overwhelmed. You were doing your best. My best wasn't good enough. He slammed his hand down on the desk. So now I make sure every detail is controlled. Every risk is minimized. My children will never suffer because I wasn't careful enough. I moved closer, my voice gentle but firm. But they are suffering. They're suffering because they don't have a father. They have a prison warden. His eyes flashed with hurt and fury. How dare you? When's the last time you held them? I pressed on. When's the last time you played with them, laughed with them, just sat on the floor and let them be silly? I don't have time for... You don't make time for it. Because if you got too close, if you let yourself love them openly, completely, you'd have to face the possibility of losing them too. The truth hit him like a physical blow. I could see it in the way his shoulders sagged, the way his carefully maintained composure finally cracked. They're all I have left of her, he whispered. If something happens to them, something will happen to them, I said softly. They'll get hurt, they'll make mistakes, they'll experience pain and disappointment and heartbreak. That's life. But if you keep them in a bubble, if you never let them truly live, you'll lose them anyway. He sank into his chair, suddenly looking older than his years. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. I don't know how to be their father without being terrified every moment that I'll fail them. I moved around the desk, doing something that probably crossed every professional boundary, but felt absolutely necessary. I placed my hand on his shoulder. You start by trusting them, I said, and by trusting yourself. He looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, his eyes weren't cold or calculating. They were filled with pain and fear and a desperate love he'd been too afraid to show. Today, he said quietly, when Mrs. Chen told me they'd been playing together, laughing, I was terrified. What if they got hurt? What if they fought and one of them got injured? What if they were happy? I finished for him. What if they felt safe enough to be children? He was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Chen said Emma asked her when you were coming back tomorrow. She's never asked about any of the other helpers. My heart swelled. She's a special little girl. They all are. I fired the last nanny because Lily started calling her mama, he confessed. I couldn't bear the thought of them getting attached to someone who might leave, like their mother left. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Mr. Whitmore, I said carefully, I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you fire me. Those children need someone who will fight for their happiness, even when it's messy, even when it's scary. He studied my face for a long moment. You realize I could fire you right now for insubordination. Yes. For questioning my parenting. Yes. For completely ignoring the schedule and rules I put in place. Yes. Then why are you still here? I smiled slightly. Because someone needs to love those children the way they deserve to be loved. And right now, that someone is me. Something shifted in his expression. The wall he'd built around himself didn't come down completely, but I saw a crack in it. The schedule, he started. Needs some flexibility, I said firmly. Children aren't machines. They need structure, yes, but they also need spontaneity, play, physical affection, and emotional connection. He was quiet for several minutes, staring out the window where the late afternoon sun was casting long shadows across the garden. If I agree to modifications to their routine, he said slowly, you need to understand that their safety comes first. Always. Of course. And I need to be informed of any major changes. Absolutely. He turned back to me. And no more breakfast picnics without clearing the menu first. Emma is mildly allergic to strawberries. My blood ran cold. She ate strawberries this morning. She seemed fine. Mild reaction. Probably just made her slightly congested, but it could get worse with repeated exposure. I felt sick. I'm so sorry. I had no idea. How could you? I never told you. He ran a hand through his hair. That's another thing. There's a medical information sheet for each child. Mrs. Chen should have given it to you on your first day. The admission that his system had failed, that his own house manager had made an oversight, seemed to humble him further. We need better communication, he said finally. All of us. I nodded. I agree. He stood up from his desk and moved to a filing cabinet, pulling out 3 folders. Medical histories, dietary restrictions, emergency contacts. he said, handing them to me. Everything you should have had from day one. As I took the folders, our hands brushed briefly. The contact was electric, unexpected, and I saw him feel it too in the way his eyes widened slightly. We both stepped back quickly. I should go check on the children, I said, my voice slightly breathless. Emily. He stopped me as I reached the door. I turned back. Thank you, he said quietly, for caring about them. As I left his office, my heart was racing for reasons that had nothing to do with nearly getting fired. Everything was about to change, and I had the feeling we were all in for a ride none of us could have expected. The next few days passed in a strange sort of dance between the old routines and new possibilities. Mr. Whitmore had agreed to modifications, but change didn't come easily to a man who'd built his life on rigid control. Wednesday morning, he surprised everyone by joining us for breakfast. The children went completely silent when he appeared in the dining room, their eyes wide with confusion. In the week I'd been there, he'd never shared a meal with them. Good morning, he said stiffly, taking a seat at the head of the long table. Good morning, Daddy, they chorused in unison, their voices careful and formal. I served their usual breakfast, measured portions of oatmeal, fresh fruit, and juice, but the atmosphere was tense. The children ate mechanically, glancing nervously between their father and me. Emma, Mr. Whitmore said suddenly, making his daughter jump slightly. How did you sleep? Fine, Daddy, she answered in a small voice. And you, James? Fine, Daddy. It was painful to watch. He was trying, but he had no idea how to talk to his own children. They were like polite strangers sharing a table. What are we doing today? He asked, looking at me. I glanced at the children, who were watching this exchange with fascination. Well, the weather's beautiful. I thought we might spend some time in the garden. Supervised outdoor play is from 10 to 11:30, he said automatically. Actually, I said carefully, I was thinking we might plant something together. Maybe some flowers or vegetables. It would be educational and give them a sense of accomplishment. The children's eyes lit up, but they quickly suppressed their excitement, waiting to see their father's reaction. He considered this for a moment. Gardening can be dirty work. Nothing a bath won't fix, I replied. And there are tools involved, sharp objects, child-safe tools only, and full supervision. He nodded slowly. I suppose that would be acceptable. Emma actually smiled, a real, genuine smile that made her whole face glow. After he left for work, the children were different, more animated, more hopeful. Daddy talked to us at breakfast. Lily marveled as we cleaned up the dishes. He did, I agreed. How did that make you feel? Scared, James admitted. But also happy? Both feelings are okay, I assured him. We spent the morning in the garden center at a local nursery, the children's excitement barely contained as they explored rows of colorful flowers and plants. I'd cleared the trip with Mrs. Chen, who'd seemed surprised but pleased by Mr. Whitmore's approval. Can we really pick anything we want? Emma asked for the third time, clutching my hand as we walked between the displays. Within reason, I laughed. Remember, we need plants that will grow well in your garden. James was fascinated by the succulents, running his fingers gently over their thick leaves. Lily gravitated toward anything purple, while Emma seemed drawn to the herbs, especially the ones that smelled good when she touched them. What's this one? She asked, pointing to a pot of mint. Mint, I told her. Smell your fingers now. Her eyes widened as she inhaled. It smells like candy. We could plant some mint and use it to make tea, I suggested. Real tea? Like grown-ups drink? Mint tea is perfect for children too. By the time we returned to the house, we had a cart full of child-friendly plants, sunflowers for James. They're as tall as giants, lavender for Lily, purple, and it smells like Mommy's perfume, she'd whispered, mint and basil for Emma, and some colorful marigolds that would be hard to kill if the children forgot to water them. We spent the afternoon in the garden, getting thoroughly dirty, as we prepared a small plot near the kitchen windows. The children worked with intense concentration, their faces streaked with soil, their clothes beyond saving. This is hard work, James observed, wiping sweat from his forehead and leaving another dirt streak. The best things usually are, I told him. Mrs. Chen watched from the kitchen window, and I could swear I saw her smile as Emma carefully patted soil around her mint plant. When will they grow? Lily asked, sitting back on her heels to admire her lavender. Plants take time, I explained. But if we take good care of them, water them, give them sunlight, talk to them nicely, they'll grow strong and beautiful. Like us? Emma asked innocently. The question caught me off guard. Yes, sweetheart, exactly like you. At 5:30, I was helping the children wash the dirt from under their fingernails when I heard the front door open. Mr. Whitmore was home early again. I felt that familiar flutter of nerves. The children and I looked like we'd been playing in mud, which, essentially, we had. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, taking in the scene. 3 dirt-streaked children, soil scattered across the usually pristine floor, and me looking like I'd lost a fight with a garden gnome. "We planted a garden," Emma announced before anyone could explain or apologize. "I can see that," he said, and I braced for criticism. But instead, he knelt down to Emma's level. "Tell me about it." The floodgates opened. All 3 children started talking at once, their words tumbling over each other as they described their plants, the digging, the careful planting, the watering. "And Emily says if we take good care of them, they'll grow big and strong like us," James finished breathlessly. Mr. Whitmore's eyes met mine over the children's heads. There was something soft in his expression that I hadn't seen before. "Would you like to see our garden, Daddy?" Lily asked shyly. "I'd love to." I watched from the kitchen window as he followed his children outside, letting them lead him to their small plot. They showed him each plant, explaining with the seriousness of master gardeners why they'd chosen them and where they'd planted them. When they came back inside, the children were chattering excitedly about dinner, about their plants, about tomorrow's watering schedule. For the first time since I'd known them, they seemed like normal, happy children. "Bath time," I announced. "All 3 of you are more dirt than human at this point." Usually, bath time was another rigid routine. Individual baths, specific products, timed precisely. But tonight, with all 3 children equally filthy and equally excited, I made an executive decision. "Big bathtub in the master bathroom," I declared. "Bubble bath party for 3. The children looked at each other with wide eyes. They'd never bathed together, never had bubbles, never had what most siblings would consider a normal shared experience. Mr. Whitmore overheard from the hallway. "The master bathroom isn't—" "It's fine," I said quickly. "Easier to supervise all 3, and that tub is big enough for them to have space." He hesitated, clearly warring with himself, then nodded. I'll be in my office if you need anything." An hour later, I'd wrestled 3 giggling, splashing children through the most chaotic and joyful bath time I'd ever supervised. They played with bubbles, made silly hairstyles with shampoo, and actually seemed to enjoy getting clean. As I was drying Emma's hair, she looked up at me in the mirror. "Emily, are you going to stay forever?" The question pierced my heart. "I'm not going anywhere, sweetheart." "Promise?" I met her eyes in the mirror, seeing so much hope and vulnerability in those blue depths. "I promise." After getting them into pajamas and reading them a story, together, in Emma's room, as had become our secret tradition, I went downstairs to clean up the kitchen and prepare for the next day. I found Mr. Whitmore sitting at the kitchen table, staring out the window at the small garden plot visible in the security lights. "They've never been that happy," he said, without turning around. I started loading the dishwasher, giving him space to process. "They're good kids. They just needed permission to be kids." "I don't know how to do what you do," he admitted. "How to make them light up like that. You made Emma light up tonight when you knelt down to listen to her about the garden." He turned to look at me. That felt foreign, like I was pretending to be someone else. "Maybe you were. Maybe you were pretending to be the father you want to be instead of the one you think you have to be." We were both quiet for a moment, the only sound the gentle hum of the dishwasher. "My wife would have loved this," he said suddenly. "The garden, the chaos, the dirt everywhere. She always said houses were meant to be lived in, not showcased. She sounds like she was wise." She was, and she would have been a much better parent than I am. I stopped what I was doing and turned to face him. "You can't parent from grief forever. Those children need you present, not perfect." He studied my face in the soft kitchen light. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Say exactly what I need to hear, even when it's not what I want to hear." The intensity in his voice made my pulse quicken. "Someone has to advocate for them, and you've appointed yourself to that role." Someone had to. We stared at each other across the kitchen, and I felt that same electric current I'd noticed before. But this time, Neither of us looked away. "Emily," he said quietly. "Yes, thank you. For today. For all of it." The moment stretched between us, charged with something I didn't dare name. Then, as if remembering himself, he stood abruptly. I have some work to finish." As he headed toward his office, he paused in the doorway. "Tomorrow is Saturday," he said without turning around. "I usually work from home on Saturdays." "Okay." I was thinking, maybe I could help with the garden, with the children. My heart did a little flip. "I think they'd love that." Good. I'll see you in the morning." After he left, I stood alone in the pristine kitchen, my heart racing and my mind spinning. This job was supposed to be simple. Take care of 3 children, earn a steady paycheck, help my daughter with college expenses. Instead, I was falling in love with a family that wasn't mine and fighting feelings for a man who was completely off limits. Tomorrow was going to change everything, and I wasn't sure any of us were ready for what was coming. Saturday morning dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for gardening. I arrived at 7 a.m. as usual, but the house felt different somehow. Less formal, more alive. Mrs. Chen met me at the door with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Mr. Whitmore is already in the kitchen with the children," she said. "He's been up since 6 making breakfast." My eyebrows shot up. "He's making breakfast?" "Attempting to," she said with the hint of a smile. "It's educational." I could hear voices and laughter coming from the kitchen, actual laughter, and my heart lifted as I walked toward the sound. The scene that greeted me was both charming and chaotic. Mr. Whitmore stood at the stove wearing a white dress shirt and dark pants, clearly having tried to dress down for the occasion, but not quite managing casual. His sleeves were rolled up, there was flour in his dark hair, and he was holding a spatula like it might attack him. The children sat at the breakfast bar, still in their pajamas, giggling as they watched their father's culinary adventures. "Daddy, that one looks like a dinosaur." Emma pointed at a particularly misshapen pancake. "I think it looks like a blob," James added helpfully. "Everything looks like blobs when I make it," Mr. Whitmore admitted, then noticed me in the doorway. "Emily, perfect timing. I think I need supervision." The easy way he said my name, the genuine smile on his face, made my pulse skip. "What seems to be the problem?" I asked, moving to stand beside him at the stove. "The pancakes keep falling apart. I followed the recipe exactly, but—" He gestured helplessly at the pan, where something that had once been batter was now resembling scrambled eggs. "Too much stirring," I diagnosed, standing close enough to smell his cologne mixed with the scent of vanilla and flour. "Pancake batter should be lumpy." "That goes against every instinct I have," he said. "I like things smooth, organized, perfect." "Well, pancakes are rebellious that way." Our eyes met, and I realized we were standing very close together. Close enough that I could see flecks of gold in his blue eyes, close enough to notice the way his breath caught slightly when I reached around him to adjust the temperature on the stove. "Let me show you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I guided his hand holding the spatula, my fingers covering his as we flipped a pancake together. The contact sent electricity shooting up my arm, and I saw him feel it too in the way his eyes darkened. "Like that," I said softly. "Like that," he repeated. But he wasn't looking at the pancake anymore. "Emily, Daddy, look at me." Emma's voice broke the moment, and we stepped apart quickly. She was standing on her chair at the breakfast bar, arms spread wide like she was flying. "That's very impressive, sweetheart, but please sit down," I said, my cheeks burning. "Are we still going to work in the garden today?" Lily asked. "Absolutely," Mr. Whitmore answered, finally managing to flip a pancake that actually looked like a pancake. "I've been looking forward to it." The children exchanged excited glances. Their father had been looking forward to spending time with them. It was probably the first time they'd heard him say anything like that. Breakfast was a revelation. Instead of the silent, formal meals I'd witnessed all week, the table was filled with chatter and laughter. Mr. Whitmore asked questions about their dreams, their favorite colors, their thoughts about everything from butterflies to space travel. "Daddy," James said around a mouthful of pancake, "did you know that sunflowers always face the sun?" "I did not know that," Mr. Whitmore replied seriously. "That's very smart of them. Emily told us yesterday. She knows lots of things about plants." "She does seem very knowledgeable," he said, glancing at me with something that looked like admiration. After breakfast, We all headed to the garden. Mr. Whitmore had changed into jeans and a polo shirt, the most casual I'd ever seen him, and he looked younger somehow, less intimidating. "What's first, boss?" he asked Emma, who giggled at being called boss by her usually serious father. "We have to check if our plants are okay," she said importantly. "And then we water them very carefully." "Very carefully," he repeated solemnly. "I understand." Watching him with the children that morning was like seeing a completely different person emerge. He got down on his hands and knees to examine their tiny seedlings. He listened intently as they explained their watering technique. He praised their work with genuine enthusiasm rather than polite distance. "Mr. Whitmore," I said during a quiet moment while the children were occupied with their plants, "you're a natural at this." He looked up from where he was helping James adjust a plant stake, dirt smudged on his cheek. "It doesn't feel natural. It feels terrifying and wonderful at the same time. That sounds like parenting to me. Is that what this is? I've been so focused on keeping them safe and structured that I forgot they need me to just be their dad." Before I could respond, Lily came running over, her hands cupped carefully in front of her. "Daddy, Emily, look what I found." She opened her hands to reveal a small ladybug sitting calmly in her palm. "She's beautiful," I said. "What are you going to do with her?" "Put her on my lavender plant," Lily decided, "so she can have a nice home." Mr. Whitmore watched his daughter carry the ladybug to her plant with infinite care, and I saw his eyes fill with unshed tears. "She's so gentle," he whispered. "I never noticed how gentle she is with everything." "You're noticing now," I said softly. "That's what matters." The morning flew by in a blur of dirt, laughter, and small discoveries. We planted herbs in a window box that they could tend from the kitchen. We created a small fairy garden with tiny decorative houses and miniature plants. We even started a compost bin with scraps from breakfast, which fascinated all three children. Around noon, Mrs. Chen appeared with sandwiches and lemonade for a picnic lunch in the garden. Instead of the formal dining room, we spread a blanket on the grass and ate surrounded by their plants. "This is the best day ever," Emma declared, leaning against her father's side. "It really is," he agreed, stroking her hair gently. "Can we do this every Saturday?" James asked hopefully. Mr. Whitmore looked at me over the children's heads. "What do you think, Emily? Should we make this a tradition?" "I think traditions are important," I said carefully. "They give children something to look forward to." "Then it's decided. Saturday morning garden time is officially on the schedule." The children cheered, and I felt a dangerous warmth spreading through my chest. This felt too much like a real family, like something I could get used to, like something I could lose my heart to completely. After lunch, while the children played nearby, Mr. Whitmore and I sat on the garden bench, ostensibly supervising, but really just enjoying the peaceful afternoon. "Can I ask you something?" he said suddenly. "Of course. Why did you take this job? I mean, really. You're clearly overqualified for domestic help. You have insights about child development that rival trained professionals. You could probably do anything you wanted." I was quiet for a moment, watching Emma chase a butterfly, while her brothers laughed at her enthusiasm. "I needed steady work," I said finally. "My daughter starts college next year, and I've been struggling financially since my divorce. But honestly, the moment I saw those three children, so well-behaved and so sad, I knew I had to try to help them." "What about your own family, your daughter?" "Sarah's 18, working part-time, focused on her future. She doesn't need me the way your children do." He turned to look at me directly. "And what about what you need?" The question caught me off guard. What I need. Everyone needs something, Emily. What do you need? I met his gaze, feeling that familiar electric current between us. I need to feel useful, to feel like I'm making a difference in someone's life. "You've made more of a difference in 6 days than anyone has in 3 years, he said quietly. "You've given me my children back." The intensity in his voice, the way he was looking at me made my heart pound. "Jacob, Mr. Whitmore," Emma's voice interrupted us. "The butterfly landed on our mint." The moment shattered, but as we got up to admire the butterfly, I felt Jacob's hand brush mine briefly. "We should talk," he said quietly. "Later, after the children are asleep." I nodded, not trusting my voice. The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of anticipation and growing awareness. Every casual touch as we worked together, every shared laugh with the children, every meaningful glance across the garden built the tension between us. By evening, after baths and dinner and bedtime stories, I was a bundle of nervous energy. At 8:30, with the children finally asleep, I found Jacob waiting for me in the kitchen. "Walk with me?" he asked, gesturing toward the garden doors. We stepped outside into the warm evening air, the garden lights casting everything in a golden glow. "Emily," he began, then stopped, running a hand through his hair. "This is complicated." "I know. You work for me. There's a power imbalance, professional boundaries." "I know," I repeated, "but I can't stop thinking about you." The confession hung between us like a bridge we could either cross or burn. "Jacob," I said softly, using his first name deliberately, "I can't stop thinking about you either." He stepped closer, close enough that I could see the conflict in his eyes, the war between what he thought he should do and what he wanted to do. "If we cross this line," he said quietly, "everything changes. Everything already has changed." He reached out, his fingertips barely grazing my cheek. "You've changed everything. You've changed me." I leaned into his touch, my heart racing. "So what do we do now?" Before he could answer, we heard a sound from the house. Emma's voice calling for me, upset about something. We sprang apart, the moment broken, but the feelings still crackling between us. "Emily!" Emma called again, more urgently. "Coming, sweetheart," I called back, then looked at Jacob. "We should go," he said. "Take care of her." As I hurried toward the house, I could feel him watching me, could feel the weight of all the unspoken words between us. Everything had changed today, but the biggest changes were yet to come. Emma had had a nightmare, something about losing Mr. Peanuts in a dark forest, and it took nearly an hour to calm her down. By the time I'd settled her back to sleep and checked on the other children, it was past 10 o'clock. I expected Jacob to have gone to his office or retired for the evening, but I found him still in the kitchen, 2 cups of coffee steaming on the counter. "Is she okay?" he asked immediately. "Just a bad dream. She's fine now." I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thank you." We stood there in the quiet kitchen, the weight of our earlier conversation hanging between us. "Jacob," I began. "I've been thinking," he interrupted, "about what you said earlier, about everything changing." "And?" He moved closer, his eyes intense in the soft light. "Maybe change isn't something to fight. Maybe it's something to embrace." My breath caught as he reached out to touch my face again, his thumb tracing my cheekbone gently. "Emily, I haven't felt anything like this since Rebecca died. I thought I was done with love, done with letting anyone close enough to matter. And now? Now I can't imagine going back to the way things were. These past few days, watching you with my children, seeing them come alive again. Seeing myself come alive again." He cupped my face in both hands, and I could see my own feelings reflected in his eyes. "I'm falling in love with you," he whispered, "and it terrifies me." "It terrifies me too," I admitted. "But Jacob, the risks, I know. Your job, the children's stability, what people will think." He rested his forehead against mine. "But I also know that what we have is real. What you've done for this family is real. The children have to come first," I said firmly. "Always. Whatever happens between us, they can't be hurt by it." "Never," he agreed immediately. "They've been through enough." We stood there, holding each other in the quiet kitchen, both of us knowing we were about to cross a line there would be no coming back from. "Emily," he said softly. "Yes, I want to kiss you." My heart hammered against my ribs. "I want you to." He lowered his head slowly, giving me time to change my mind, to step away, to remember all the reasons this was complicated. But I didn't want to remember those reasons. I wanted to remember how it felt to be wanted, to be needed, to be falling in love with a man who looked at me like I was everything he'd been searching for. When his lips touched mine, it was gentle at first, tentative, as if we were both afraid the moment might shatter. But when I kissed him back, when I felt him respond, the tenderness gave way to something deeper, more urgent. Years of loneliness, of putting everyone else's needs first, of convincing myself I didn't deserve this kind of happiness, melted away in that kiss. I felt alive in a way I hadn't since before my marriage fell apart, since before I stopped believing in fairy tales. When we finally broke apart, both of us were breathing hard. "Wow," I whispered. "Wow," he agreed, his hands still framing my face. "I've wanted to do that since the first time you challenged me in my office." "Really? Because you seemed ready to fire me on the spot." He laughed softly. "I was. You scared me. You walked into my perfectly controlled world and turned everything upside down in a matter of hours. Is that good or bad? It's the best thing that's happened to me in 3 years." Before I could respond, we heard a sound that made both our hearts stop, the soft creak of footsteps on the stairs. We sprang apart just as Emma appeared in the kitchen doorway, clutching Mr. Peanuts and rubbing her eyes. "Emily?" she said sleepily. I couldn't sleep. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, going to her immediately, my heart still racing from both the kiss and the close call. "I heard voices. I thought you were leaving." The fear in her small voice broke my heart. "Oh, honey, I'm not going anywhere, remember? I promised." But the other helpers always left when they talked to Daddy at night. Jacob and I exchanged glances. How many times had she witnessed conversations that ended with someone walking out of her life? "Emma," Jacob said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Emily isn't going anywhere. She's part of our family now." The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than he probably intended. Emma looked between us with those perceptive blue eyes. "Really? She's staying forever?" "Forever is a very long time," I said carefully. "But yes, I'm staying." Emma smiled and threw her arms around my neck. "Good. I love you, Emily." The simple, innocent words hit me like a physical blow. This child, who'd been abandoned by so many caregivers, was brave enough to love me openly, completely. "I love you too, sweetheart," I whispered, holding her tight. When I looked up, Jacob was watching us with an expression of such tenderness that it took my breath away. "Can I have some warm milk?" Emma asked. Mommy used to give me warm milk when I couldn't sleep. It was the first time she'd mentioned her mother in my presence, and I saw Jacob tense slightly. "Of course," I said. "Would you like honey in it?" "With honey, please. That's how Mommy made it." As I warmed the milk, Jacob sat with Emma at the kitchen table, and I heard him say something that nearly made me drop the pan. "Tell me about Mommy, Emma. What do you remember?" Emma's face lit up. She smelled like flowers, and she sang songs, and she always kissed my forehead before bed. "What kind of songs?" Jacob asked, his voice slightly rough. "Happy songs, about sunshine and butterflies and love." "I remember those songs," Jacob said softly. "She sang them to me too." Watching this moment between father and daughter, seeing Jacob finally allow Emma to talk about her mother, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just about Jacob and me anymore. This was about healing a family that had been broken by grief and fear. I served Emma her warm milk, and she drank it curled up in her father's lap, something I'd never seen before. When she was finished, Jacob carried her back upstairs, and I heard him singing softly as he tucked her in. When he came back down, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "She remembers more than I thought," he said. "Children always do. I've been so afraid of them missing her that I tried to erase her completely. That was wrong. You were protecting them the only way you knew how. And yourself." He pulled me into his arms, holding me close. "How did you get so wise?" "Single motherhood and life experience," I said lightly, but my voice was muffled against his chest. "Emily, about what happened before Emma came down. I know. We need to be careful. The children can't find out about us, not until we're sure about what this is." "I'm sure," he said firmly. "Are you?" I looked up into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability there, the hope, the love he was no longer trying to hide. "I'm sure," I admitted. "I'm terrified and completely out of my depth, but I'm sure." He kissed me again, softer this time, full of promise and possibility. "So what now?" I asked when we broke apart. "Now we take it slow. We figure out how to blend what's between us with what's best for the children. We build something real and lasting. And if people have opinions about the help falling for her employer?" His jaw tightened. "You're not the help, Emily. You're the woman who saved my family, and anyone who has a problem with that can answer to me." The fierce protectiveness in his voice made my heart flutter. "I should go," I said reluctantly. "It's late, and tomorrow is Sunday." "Actually," he said, not releasing me from his arms, "I was hoping you might stay for dinner tomorrow. As a family friend, not as an employee. The children have been asking if you could stay for Sunday dinner. Jacob, please, let us have one normal family dinner. Let the children have you there, not because it's your job, but because you want to be there. How could I say no to that? How could I deny those 3 children and myself the chance to feel like a real family, even if it was just for one evening? Okay, I agreed. Sunday dinner. As a family friend. His smile was radiant. Perfect. As I finally headed home that night, my lips still tingling from his kisses, my heart full of hope and possibility, I knew there was no going back. I was in love with Jacob Whitmore. I was in love with his children. I was in love with the family we were becoming. And tomorrow, we would take the next step toward whatever future we were building together. But first, we had to survive the scrutiny of Mrs. Chen, the gossiping neighbors, and the very real challenges of blending love with responsibility. Sunday was going to be a test of everything we thought we wanted, and I had a feeling not everyone was going to be happy about the changes coming to the Whitmore household. Sunday arrived with unexpected complications. I'd barely slept, my mind racing between excitement about dinner with the family and anxiety about what we were starting. When I arrived at the house at my usual time, Mrs. Chen met me at the door with an expression that could have frozen water. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. My heart sank. Somehow, she knew. She led me to the formal sitting room, a space I'd never been invited into before, and closed the door behind us. "Sit," she commanded, and I obeyed, feeling like a teenager caught sneaking out. "Mrs. Chen, if this is about you and Mr. Whitmore," she interrupted. "Yes, it is." I felt heat rise in my cheeks. "I don't know what you think you saw." "I saw nothing," she said firmly. "But I've worked in this house for 8 years. I knew Rebecca before she died. I've watched this family struggle with grief and isolation, and I've seen more caregivers come and go than I care to count." I waited, not sure where this was heading. "In 1 week," she continued, "you've accomplished something none of us managed in 3 years. Those children are happy, really happy. And Mr. Whitmore, he's alive again." "Mrs. Chen, I also know that look," she said pointedly. "I've seen how he watches you, how you watch him. I've seen the way you all move around each other like a family that's still figuring itself out." I couldn't deny it, so I said nothing. "Here's what I need you to understand," she said, her tone softening slightly. "Those children have been abandoned by every woman who's cared for them, except their mother, who didn't choose to leave. They cannot survive another heartbreak. I would never intentionally hurt them. I believe that. But Emily, what happens if this thing between you and Mr. Whitmore doesn't work out? What happens to Emma, James, and Lily when their father's girlfriend moves on? How do you explain that to 3-year-olds who've already lost so much?" Her questions hit me like physical blows because they were the same ones that had kept me awake all night. "I don't have easy answers," I admitted, "but I love those children. Whatever happens between Jacob and me, I wouldn't just disappear from their lives. Love isn't always enough," Mrs. Chen said gently. "Sometimes circumstances force us to make choices we never wanted to make." Before I could respond, we heard the thunder of small feet running through the house. "Emily! Emily! Are you here?" Emma's voice called out. Mrs. Chen and I looked at each other. "They've been awake since sunrise," she said with a slight smile. "Apparently, today is a special day because Emily is staying for dinner." My heart clenched. They were so excited about something that adults would consider routine, having dinner with someone they cared about. "Mrs. Chen," I said as we heard the children getting closer, "I can't promise there won't be complications, but I can promise that those children's well-being will always come first. Always." She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. That's all I needed to hear. Emma burst through the sitting room door, still in her pajamas, her hair a wild tangle of curls. "There you are," she exclaimed, launching herself into my arms. "Daddy said you're having dinner with us like a real family." Over her head, I saw Mrs. Chen raise an eyebrow at the phrase, "real family." "That's right, sweetheart. I'm looking forward to it." James and Lily appeared in the doorway, equally excited and disheveled. "Can we make dessert together?" Lily asked hopefully. "Can we eat in the fancy dining room?" James added. "Can we stay up late?" Emma finished. "One thing at a time," I laughed, ushering them toward the kitchen. "First, breakfast. Then we'll plan our special dinner." The morning passed in a whirlwind of activity. We made pancakes again, with Jacob's improved technique. and spent time in the garden checking on their plants. The children were more animated than I'd ever seen them, practically vibrating with excitement about the evening ahead. Jacob appeared mid-morning, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater that made his eyes look impossibly blue. "How are the preparations going?" he asked, and I could hear the double meaning in the question. "Perfectly," I replied, meeting his gaze. "Everything's under control." But even as I said it, I felt the weight of Mrs. Chen's warnings, the complexity of what we were attempting, the high stakes of getting this right. Around noon, Jacob suggested we take the children to the park while dinner preparations were underway. It seemed like a simple family outing, but I was acutely aware that we were stepping into new territory. At the park, other families were enjoying the beautiful Sunday afternoon. Children played on swings and slides while parents watched from benches. And for the first time, Jacob and I were among them as something approaching a couple. "Push me higher, Emily," Emma called from the swing. "Me too," James echoed from beside her. As I pushed both children, Jacob stood behind Lily's swing, his hands gentle as he helped her soar through the air. To any observer, we looked like a normal family. Mom, Dad, 3 kids, enjoying a Sunday at the park. "This feels right," Jacob said quietly when the children had run off to the playground equipment. "It does," I agreed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we were living in a bubble that could burst at any moment. "Emily, look," Emma called from the top of the slide. "I'm flying." "I see you, baby," I called back, then caught Jacob watching me with that expression that made my heart race. "What?" I asked. "You're a natural mother," he said softly. "The way they respond to you, the way you just know what they need." "I had good practice with Sarah," I replied, but his words warmed me. "It's more than that. It's intuitive. It's love." Before I could respond, a familiar voice made both of us freeze. "Jacob? Jacob Whitmore?" We turned to see a perfectly polished woman in designer workout clothes approaching with 2 children in tow. Her smile was bright but calculating, and I immediately felt underdressed in my simple jeans and sweater. "Catherine Morrison," Jacob said, his voice carefully neutral. "How are you?" "I'm wonderful," she replied, her eyes already assessing me with barely concealed curiosity. "I haven't seen you at the club lately." "I've been busy," he said simply. "I can imagine." Her gaze flicked to me again. "And this is—" The pause was loaded, expectant. I could see Jacob tense, weighing his options. "This is Emily," he said finally. "She's been helping with the children." The dismissive way he introduced me, necessary as it might have been, stung more than I expected. I was the help again, not the woman he'd kissed in his kitchen last night, not the person who'd brought his children back to life. "How lovely," Catherine said with a patronizing smile. "It's so hard to find good help these days, especially with children." "Emily is exceptional," Jacob said, and I heard the edge in his voice. "I'm sure she is." Catherine's tone suggested she thought nothing of the sort. "Well, I should let you get back to your family time. We're having a little gathering next weekend, just the usual crowd. You should come. Bring Rebecca's sister if you'd like. I know she's still single." The casual mention of his dead wife, the assumption about his romantic availability, the complete dismissal of my presence. It was like watching someone try to erase everything that had happened between us in the past week. "I'll think about it," Jacob replied politely. After Catherine left, the easy atmosphere of our afternoon was gone. The children, sensitive to adult tensions they couldn't understand, became quieter, more clingy. "Everything okay?" I asked Jacob as we walked back to the car. "Fine," he said, but his jaw was tight. She's part of my old social circle. Rebecca's old social circle. "She seemed nice," I lied. He stopped walking and turned to face me. "Emily, what she said." "You introduced me as the help," I said quietly, "which is what I am." "No, you're not. Not anymore. But in public, with people like Catherine," he ran a hand through his hair. "It's complicated." "I know it is." But as we drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just gotten a glimpse of our future. The raised eyebrows, the assumptions, the social pressures that would come with a relationship between Jacob Whitmore and his children's caregiver. Dinner that evening was both magical and bittersweet. We ate in the formal dining room, as James had requested, with candles and the good china. The children were on their best behavior, chattering excitedly about their week, their garden, their plans for the future. "This is the best dinner ever," Emma declared, and Jacob and I shared a look across the table. "It really is," Jacob agreed, and I could see him trying to recapture the easy intimacy we'd lost at the park. After dinner, we moved to the living room for dessert. Homemade cookies the children had helped prepare. They curled up on the sofa between Jacob and me, Emma with her head on my shoulder, James leaning against his father, Lily sprawled across both our laps. "I wish it could always be like this," Lily said sleepily. "Like what, sweetheart?" Jacob asked. "Like a real family," she said, echoing Emma's words from the night before. I felt Jacob's eyes on me over the children's heads. The weight of their innocent hope, their desperate need for stability, pressed down on both of us. When it was time for bed, the children begged me to stay for stories. "Please, Emily," Emma pleaded. "It's not a school night. Just this once," I agreed, though I could see Mrs. Chen watching from the doorway with concern. I read them 3 stories, sang them 2 lullabies, and tucked each one in with extra kisses and promises that I'd see them tomorrow. When I finally came downstairs, Jacob was waiting in the kitchen with 2 glasses of wine. "Thank you," he said simply. "For today, for all of it." "It was wonderful," I said, accepting the wine. "But Jacob, we need to talk about what happened at the park." He sighed. "Catherine has a big mouth and very traditional views about class distinctions. Is that what this is about? Class? Partly. You know what people will say. Rich widower, employee half his age. I'm 45, Jacob. Hardly half your age. You know what I mean. The assumptions, the gossip, the judgment about your motivations and mine." I set down my wine glass, suddenly feeling exhausted. "And what are your motivations?" "Really?" He moved closer, cupping my face in his hands. "I love you. I love who I am when I'm with you. I love who my children are when you're here. But I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of what this means, scared of how people will react, scared of messing up the best thing that's happened to this family in years." I leaned into his touch, feeling the pull between us, even as doubt crept in. "Maybe Mrs. Chen was right," I said quietly. "Maybe we're moving too fast. Maybe we should slow down, think about this more carefully." "Is that what you want?" he asked, and I could hear the hurt in his voice. "I want what's best for those children upstairs. They can't survive another loss, another person walking away." "Then don't walk away. What if you change your mind? What if the social pressure gets to be too much? What if—" He silenced me with a kiss, desperate and full of everything we couldn't say. "I'm not changing my mind," he said against my lips. "Are you?" Looking into his eyes, seeing the love and fear and hope reflected there, I knew my answer. "No," I whispered. "I'm not." "Then we figure it out together. We take it one day at a time. We put the children first, and we don't let other people's opinions determine our future. Promise me something," I said. "Anything. Promise me that if this gets too complicated, if it starts to hurt the children, we'll find a way to step back without destroying what we've built for them." "I promise," he said solemnly. "Do you promise me the same?" "I promise." 3 months later, I was standing in that same kitchen, wearing a simple white dress, as Jacob slipped a ring onto my finger in front of Emma, James, Lily, Mrs. Chen, and my daughter Sarah, who'd flown in for the small ceremony. "Do you, Emily, promise to love these children as your own?" the judge asked, adding a clause we'd requested. "I do," I said, looking at 3 faces beaming with joy. "Do you, Jacob, promise to honor the love Emily has brought to this family?" "I do," he replied, his eyes never leaving mine. "Then, by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." As we kissed, I heard Emma whisper to her siblings, "Now we're a real family forever." And we were. Not perfect, not without challenges, but real and lasting, and built on a foundation of love that had transformed us all. Sometimes the most beautiful things grow from the messiest soil. Sometimes love finds you when you're not looking for it, in the form of 3 children who need you and a man brave enough to let you into his carefully guarded heart. Catherine Morrison and her social circle could whisper all they wanted. Mrs. Chen had given us her blessing along with her best recipes, and the children's garden had grown into something magnificent, just like our family. The woman who'd been hired as just a maid had become a wife, a mother, and the heart of a home that finally understood the difference between a house and a place where love lives.